All right, everybody, welcome back. There is no scheduled break between the first and second panel this morning, so we're going to move on. Those of you in the break room, please come back. So our next panel is the demand for better lawyering, and our discussion leader is Mr. James Austin from Kansas City, Missouri. James.
I'm slowly stalling and waiting for someone, but that's okay. First thing I'm going to do is tell you something that you already know. Immigration law is complicated. I mean, for a small area of law and an entire scheme of law, it's amazingly huge and complex. And that's why you're going to see within immigration law a problem. Sorry, you just need your face. All right. There's a lot of specialized areas in immigration law, and there's no end to the knowledge you can get. If you pick any area of immigration law, there's no bottom to that well. You can learn and learn and learn. And the longer that you practice immigration law, the more you realize how little you really know about it. It's a great field to be in because it's very intellectually challenging. I mean, it's bottomless. The problem with practicing immigration law, one of the big problems is that we get bogged down in the process. We start losing sight of the law and the concepts under those processes. And you almost have to force yourself to intellectually keep studying, keep learning the law, not just be a paper pusher, not just get to the point where, I know how to file these, and I know this is what I need basically to file, and I've got a list of evidence. It's much more than that. It is an intellectual challenge, and it's one of those that doesn't come naturally to many people. It doesn't come naturally to me. You have to force yourself to do it. It's one of the reasons why when you go to interviews, oftentimes you're more knowledgeable about the immigration law than that immigration officer is. They are very compartmentalized in what they do. We're talking some good, smart people, but they get limited training in the law. They have limited time to do training. They can't just take a week off like we do all the time, I'm sure, to go out and learn something at a conference. But much of the training involves systems. It involves their process, personnel issues, how to operate their different systems, what checks to do, not substantive law. So you'll see it many times in interviews, and probably many of you have, that you think you have a fairly routine case, but maybe a little twist, and you're having to try to very diplomatically and politely change or explain that law to the officer. So there's no better understanding. And if you're a regular at the local office, some of the officers will actually ask you questions, to see how this works. They're going to verify later, but they like to understand right then. Now, this is also another sort of ethics panel, and I'm not going to sit here and read the ethical rules to you. But in almost every state, the number one rule is competency. And you know essentially what competency is, being competent. Legal knowledge and skill, keep up with changes in the law and changes in the practice. That's competence according to the rules. Well, we're all competent. It's a very low standard under the rules. But with immigration law and the way it changes quickly, and the depth of knowledge that's required, one of the most difficult things to do is to stay competent. Because if you just are static and don't keep learning, the law's going to pass you by. So is the process. We spend enough of our time dealing with the process, probably 50, 60, 70% of the time. We're more worried about trying to figure out where to file something because it changed last week. It's hard to keep up, but you've got to also keep sharp. You've got to keep mentally sharp and understanding the laws. And frankly speaking, and you all know this, there are levels of attorney competence in this, especially in the immigration field. I mean, you'll see some that are strictly process. They're pushing papers. There's some that are more esoteric, more intellectual at it. It's not enough to be competent. We want to be good. And if you want to be a good immigration lawyer, you've got to push yourself. We have to strive to be better. That's getting beyond just mainly competent. Now, I've got a wonderful group here There's names for it on the board, they're in front of you. I'm going to introduce Andy Wood, Nikki Dryden, and Lisa Hall. Yeah. That's for the visually impaired. You can't read the names in front of them. They're going to tell you how to stay confident and how to go beyond just being confident, but how to be a better lawyer, how to strive to be a better lawyer. So first thing is we're going to talk about is how to be confident, how to stay confident. I mean, what resources do you use? What do you do just to keep current in this changing field? Whoever wants to start here.
Well, I'll start by saying that when we were preparing for this, I found this neat little thing that on ALA you can actually curate your interests that will then come to you in your email. So not the ALA, the other email update you get of all the changes with about 25. You can actually curate what comes to you. And I did not know that until we were preparing for this. So I always read the 25, but now I'm reading ones that although I'm very interested in asylum, it's not part of my practice anymore, and so I've sadly taken that out of my list. So that was a neat little trick that I discovered. And my rule is when I do read that 25 list, skip the headlines. If I do click on one and open it, I must read it before I save it. I always save things if I do have trouble navigating ALA on this website, and if you know you read something, I have a hard time with their search. But what I will do is save it in my own drive. And there's something that fits my brain. And but I always make sure I read it first, because if I don't, then there's no point saving it for a later date.
And I think what Nikki brings up is one of the points Nikki brings up is the wealth of information on ALA's website and their numerous sources of how to not only read those resources and keep up on things, but where do you go and have some kind of little trick or some little method that something that I do is carve out about 15 to 20 minutes every morning. And that's my reading any time of day, but you want to make sure that we keep up on things. So if I don't have that 15 minutes every day, then I won't always get to the email. It's like, where's that in the past? I've had stretches where a month goes by and I've barely read some of those emails, but when I'm at my best, and this is how I try to keep at my best, is by having a system that I really stick to. So 15 minutes first thing, I skim through all the headlines. Sometimes I'll save, I'll open up a window on my browser and I'll have the full article or photos, and I'll come back to it later in the day or something, but before I close that window, I'm going to read it. So finding whatever works for each of us, and finding routines.
Yeah, I would agree too. Like, I'm a very appreciative person of the ALA, posts. I think that helps, especially us right now during this particular time. I think it's always changing. Something that a previous panel yesterday mentioned was the UCIS alerts. I'm subscribed to them. I don't know how many people are here, but we suggest those. And I find listservs, a lot of the ALA listservs, they're very helpful, especially certain chapters. They can be very much more active. I'm also not only a member of the RDC and the BDC, as well as Washington and my own, native state of Nevada, but each kind of lends a little dimension that I think it kind of works out to my practice. So you get to find out a little bit of the nuances. If you do consular processing, BDC and RDC become much more important. And then, of course, I do serve, on the DOJ website these days, because you get to find out a lot more. They seem to, post and scold the attorneys, I think. And I saw a Nevada attorney recently actually indicted for tax evasion, which just came up, I thought it was a neat little case, but of course it's
Let's talk a little more, because we keep coming back to implement, it seems. And how do you find the information? How do you best use, what's the best tools to try and locate information with that?
I have a hard time, like I said, navigating it. So if I haven't saved it in my own system, I do find it difficult to use it as a primary research tool. So I actually sort every case. So I have my reactive research, so I have my proactive, which is what we all talked about, and then there's the reactive. The case comes in. The first thing I do is I sort by Google, because sometimes I just can't remember what I'm talking about. So I'll start with Google. Okay, yeah, now I remember it. Sometimes it'll trigger, okay, that was the name of the practice advisory. Because for me, it's like for InfoNet, you have to have like a pretty good parameter for your search terms for what it is you're looking for. But if you haven't read it before, I do find it difficult to just do a start your search there. So I start my search on Google, and I start my search on the FAM, which is something that I did not learn in law school, despite the fact that my professors said, go to the code in UCC. I got, I think, B- in contracts. I did not buy the UCC because I was trying to save money. So I failed miserably in law school understanding that the regs were the most important thing. I found it more interesting to read the textbook, but I finally realized now, 10 years into my practice, that you have to sort. I sort every consular case with them. No matter, even if I just read it yesterday, there's so many updates that I feel like I have to constantly go back to the very beginning every time in the event that something has been tweaked.
I'll do the shameless plug-in for, the CURS ban that's gonna come out. I mean, I think many of us, do refer to that, and I always think that's kind of a nice little overview, kind of an outline, and then, start digging into the problem a little bit more. So, that's something that we use quite a bit as well, and going back to the regs, because I think we kind of drift away, we think we know it all eventually.
So I just want to add also, I think one thing I have to acknowledge is there's no simple solution. I haven't found a simple solution. It takes time, it's going to continue to take time, and effort to stay current on things. So a couple things in the consular context. What do we have to stay current in the consular context? One of the things preparing for this panel that we've discussed is try to make each other's brains for little tips, for little things that help us be more efficient and more up to date. So in the consular context, like he said, the ban, that's there have been a number of changes in the ban, of course, and they keep unrolling, and we see those on AOL and InfoNet. We see those as they come out, but we've got to keep up to date on them, and the reciprocity schedule changes. That's something that we try to maintain awareness of. So one thing that we do with all of our consular cases, most of my consular work is in the family-based context, and one of the things we do with all our consular cases is we have the front flap of the file, we have a chart of the meeting, and we have the pre-NBC filing for pre-interview. We have columns in the box to check off for someone to sign off on what date, like put the date in the box of when did you check the reciprocity schedule and make sure that the birth certificate is up to par. What did you check for each of the civil documents and check off that? And then once we get to the interview, is there a change on the police certificate? Is there a change on any of the requirements that we have to have for the cases supposed to interview? Making sure that we let me leave it at that.
Oh, one of the things we say is not just being on a listserv is actually responding to questions on the listserv. And for all intents and purposes, I'm a solo practitioner, even though I work at large firms. I'm completely isolated by myself in Australia. So for me to be able to keep sharp, even when I don't necessarily have time, someone puts an interesting question onto the listserv, whether it's BDC or I'm also on the O1, EB1 page listserv. I like to see if I can figure out the answer, because I think it keeps us sharp, even if I have to do research for the person, which sometimes makes me a bit crazy if I can't find the answer quickly. But I think it's really important. And I also just became an ALA mentor, and I'm looking forward to be able to like really test myself, because it's one thing just to read passively the correspondence on the listserv. It's another thing to have to provide an answer that has legal backup to it. So it's not just about being on these things, it's being actually actively engaged with them in your chapter and your listserv, so that you're actually quizzing yourself, thinking through the solutions where it's appropriate to your expertise, and then getting the different answers, because I think that's one of the best parts, is really having a group of colleagues around you who you trust. A lot of us are solo practitioners who already work in small firms, so it's really important to be able to test what you're doing outside of your bubble.
And just to add, I mean, in Nevada, I'm actually, many of us are solos in ALA, and I think that, it's no fun being on the island alone, and I think we have a small group of attorneys that, we're fairly active, and we'll ask one another through group texts and kind of throw out a question or something procedural that's maybe happening, and we all kind of chime in, and I think that's kind of useful, especially if you are just solo out there. It does help. I think that many of us, just get inundated with the word. That's important.
Yeah, along those lines of using the listserv, using each other as colleagues, I mean, what's one of the most important things for consular work is to know your post, right? And get for that, just like everything we're talking about preparing for a consular interview. We gotta know the post, we gotta know what the lay of the land is in the area. That's one of the things that's great about this chapter, in my opinion, is being able to reach out to someone who's on the ground and a local practitioner who has a number of cases in the same area to make sure that we're communicating and keeping current on what is the lay of the land in each post, what are the local processes, are there been any changes on even something like preparing a plan for the biometrics for a consular interview, and when is that going to happen, and how things vary within post.
You're all just giving testimony to the old adage, you cannot practice immigration law in a vacuum. You have to have people sit there and bounce questions off of me. And half of the questions are, am I right on this? Because, the things that you think you know, you're not really always sure you know. It's a very tough area of practice. You've got to have people around. You're listening many other ways. I like what maybe you're talking about the listservs as a wonderful way. And it's not just reading the listservs to get information, but analyzing the questions that are asked, checking the legal aspect. There are several national listservs, and if you read them, you see a variety of different things on there. And a lot of times the answers are just plain wrong. And, you have to, of course, limit yourself how often you want to go on and correct someone. But it's amazing how attorneys think they know something, but they really haven't looked at the law. Just because that's how practitioners view it in one area doesn't mean that's what the law is. But yeah, the use of the listservs are wonderful, especially if you analyze what's on the listserv and filter. Always filter. I'm sorry, again, pick on you. No, I said, thank you. You mentioned reactive versus proactive. And there is a difference. And especially, and then Andy mentioned the National Visa Center. So proactively, how do you keep current with the processing at the National Visa Center or the laws that are applied when using it?
Yeah, so the one thing that in addition to the daily updates from ALA, there's must-have for a consular attorney, there's must-reads, and that's obviously the DOS liaison minutes, and also any liaison minutes that come out from consular posts around the world. I'm fortunate that I get to go to a lot of the ones in Asia, but it's really, you learn a little bit, reading about one in Argentina or whatnot, because I think anytime I can hear from a consular officer, that's proactive research that I need to do just to be able to be competent as a consular practicing attorney. And the same with other liaison meeting notes. So that would be NBC, back when there was liaisons with other agencies, I would say those. So that's part of the proactive, basic, knowledge. Because I feel it's out there in the public. I have to know it.
And that's really what a lot of this is about, is how to be proactive, how to learn this stuff before you need it. I mean, and we spend enough of our time trying to figure it out after we already know what it is. But it's always best to know in advance. Where do you find the liaison notes?
Someone emails them to me, and I save them. I actually print them out, because that's one that does take a longer time to read through, and it's usually like my computer reading. That's just how I do those minutes. So I don't print them out. I find it really hard to put aside time to read 17 pages or however long it is. So for me, and there's been times when 2 sets of liaison minutes get stacked. I'm like, has this really been 6 months? And that happens, but, it's there. That's the goal, to get through it. I think you can probably find it the one thing that's nice is if you do fall behind, there is repetition in the AILA condensed email. So whether it's the AILA 8 or the 25 that you get, there is repetition. So sometimes I miss that. I'm like, how did I miss that a month ago? But it happens, and that's why it's great that they repeat stuff.
Yeah, and I think do a search on the AILA InfoNet is going to help you find the liaison minutes. That's something that I go to frequently for the liaison minutes. Maybe it takes a little while before it's going to come out, but that's where I find it.
There is a wealth of information in the liaison minutes. And, we keep curling back to InfoNet, and we discussed this before, and we talked about participation. Being on a panel is a great way to learn and to expand your thoughts. Because we learn different ways that we use InfoNet. My advocacy has always been, let me back up just a minute if you don't mind. I'm an old practitioner. Before computers, the goal of the really good immigration attorneys would get the interpreter releases and AILA's monthly mailing. And I remember telling the person that brought me into it, that was my mentor, that my goal was to be able to go through the interpreter releases, which was a weekly publication, and at least understand the basics of what they were talking about in each of the 70 or 80 articles. And he looked at me and he goes, I can't do that yet. Well, I probably, if I picked up an old interpreter release, I probably couldn't either, but that was my goal, was to try and understand it. I don't memorize what's in that. Same with InfoNet. The way I use it, some people use AILA 8. My computer, when I open the internet, it goes directly to recent postings, and you can set it to do, and there's a button for recent postings. Mine automatically comes up. Every day, I read the title of every recent posting, just like I used to do in the old print versions. I won't understand all of it. I won't notice. Only a few of them I'll read. Liaison minutes come out, I'll know they're there. But I'll know everything that's been advanced in immigration law, because there is very little that happens in immigration law that is not in an AILA posting. And if you look at the recent postings, and for example, I'm spreading this a bit, the AILA 8 gives you the top 8. My view is that's lazy. You're limiting your knowledge. There are an average of 20, 25 postings every day of something going on in immigration law. I read every one of them. Even on vacation, I will read the headlines, so I know what happened. Because then if something comes up a week later, I can usually say, hey, that was on InfoNet. I don't need the chapter to sing around something that's going on, because almost all the chapter things I get like that, they were already posted on InfoNet or would be in the next 20 minutes. So if you want to keep informed of everything going on, even if you don't understand all of it, but you know it happened, you get on ALA and on the recent postings. And I learned that there are ways to set if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to create postings every single day, then there's a way you get it at the end of the day, a summary of it, not just the ALA. I mean, keep in mind, ALA, first off, ALA, there's always two to three commercials in there for ALA. So you really should say ALA 5 or 6. I know they like to use it as marketing, but they use Infonet as marketing too. It's a business, we got to do this. But you're only seeing less than 1/3 of all the postings on Infonet if all you're looking at is ALA, which means you're missing 2/3 of everything that's going on in immigration law. And so if you want to be active, if you want to be competent, beyond competent, you need to see everything that's coming. But like I said, I learned that there are other ways. You can do it in a digest form, right? And that works too. Just like you can do a lot of the national listservs in digest. I don't like that real well. But that's okay, because a lot of the digests don't have the little blurb, that you get on a posting, without actually clicking on it. But you hit everything we talked about pretty much is on ALA, and that's proactive, right? You read about it before you need it. And your search, of course, is going to be reactive, and ALA has the great search functions. And the liaison minutes are just absolutely crucial. So I'm kind of passionate about information, because information is your knowledge. And, if you want to know what's going on, you're going to have to force yourself to do it, because somebody's just going to be force feeding it. What else? Participation. What else do you participate in that makes you a better lawyer, that teaches you something? I'm stonewalling there. They expect some of these questions.
Yeah, I think it's important to develop good relationships, whether you get the consular post, whether it's in your local ICE office. For me, I think that goes back to a little bit of the competency, because certain things change, and having a little bit of a relationship, sometimes you get to find out a few things a little bit earlier than maybe everyone else, jurisdictionally anyways. So I find that a little bit helpful. I'm also a member of the ABA, and I find it a wealth of information, because, the government attorneys are at the table as well, and you get a different perspective. So it's a little bit proactive, do you have anything to add? I know Andy and I were kind of talking about, some of the relationships that we develop in our agencies, and how they speak to us now.
And of course, there are a lot of changes in some of those relationships, but one of the relationships that's better than other agencies is in the State Department. Look at the participation we had yesterday from the consular officers. So we've got to listen to that. We've got to take notes. What did we hear yesterday when some of the consular officers were talking about applicants that come onto their windows for interviews? If someone comes up and is saying, this is necessarily new to us, if someone comes up and says, and let's ask the question, why do you want to visit the US? Saying, to meet my grandchild, that's not good enough. Like, what kind of work are you doing in the US? Computer stuff, that's not good enough. We've got to our clients, first of all, we've got to listen to what the officers are saying, listen to what the different government agencies are saying, we try to be in tune with that and learn from them. So, yesterday, having an experience like yesterday is a great example and a great way to do that. Things are getting tougher, I think, is the reality. If we want to keep providing quality service and be competent attorneys, then we need to keep informed. We need to be aware of our current reality. And I think the reality is that we're working in a hostile and quickly evolving environment with our government. Our government's not playing by the same rules that it was before this administration. Some of the things that have happened recently, our president's just recently accused the immigration bar of being unethical because we represent individuals who are applying for asylum. USCIS is considering sanctioning, or not sanctioning, but just read something a couple weeks ago about USCIS considering disciplining examiners who are approving too many cases. And this is not the same environment that we were dealing with 2 years ago, and we can't just keep doing business as normal. So we need to constantly keep informed. We need to be ready to modify our approach accordingly. We need to be ready to prepare our clients in whatever time that takes to get them ready for their immigrant visa interview, bring it back to the consular context, and for those who are ready for an immigrant visa interview or non-immigrant visa interview. We need to spend time with them. We need to know what the post is like. We need to have cultural competence and awareness. And if I know that my Chinese grandmother that's applying for a B2 visa is going to have a hard time saying more than I'm going to see my grandchild, then maybe that's going to take some hours to get her ready to really explain in more depth what is the purpose of her trip. How do we know that how can we get her ready to actually speak up and say, well, I also have an 80-year-old mother myself who I've got to take care of, and I do that on a daily basis. I've got some things here in my hand in case you'd like to look at them.
But you gain that knowledge, so by participating in the panel, but by being at the conference, this is knowledge that you pass on to your clients, this is background. Obviously, you all know that because you're here, unless you just came for the food, which some of us do. Competency, how about incompetence? Are there areas that you know that you're not confident in? And this is a big field of law. Are there certain areas that you don't practice law?
Well, I was competent in perm H1B 4 years ago before I left the United States. My feeling is that it would be a bad idea for me to try to file a cap case from Australia just for the logistical purposes of what happens if I get stuck at customs. So for me, I've decided it would be unethical for me to try and file a cap case. So, that's certainly, and then perm as well. I just felt like I'm going to be shifting gears to consular work, trying to maintain competency in perm. Also, don't really love perm, so it's easy to give it up. But for me, those are two things that right away I can say, you know what, those are best handled by lawyers stateside. And, so that I give me more time to focus on.
So maybe just being away 4 years from perm and not keeping an update on it, you don't feel comfortable doing it.
No, and I think even just having the initial conversation, I mean, I can say, look, last time I filed a perm was 4 years ago. This is the way it worked. But I've also not engaged in educating myself on perm because there's not enough time in the day. So I specifically, it's like when perm stuff comes through, I don't read that many DOL updates. So for me, it's just like I put that in a box and it's on the shelf. And hopefully I'll never have to put it down. But, I don't think I can have a very cursory conversation with the client about perm and say, like, this is the general process. I can't talk to wait times, et cetera. But, I can still do the analysis and if I needed to. But I'm also fortunate that I have, attorneys that can handle that for me.
So you got the concept still.
Exactly, yeah. So, but I certainly think it's just, there's only so much time in the day if I want to be the best consular attorney I can be. Why do I need to flood my brain with perm?
It's interesting how a lot of immigration lawyers will specialize and, I'm sorry, let me interrupt you just for a minute. By being more specialized, do you think you're better at that than you used to be?
That consular work?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes. Obviously I spend all day describing people for visa interviews across Asia. So, just the volume alone makes me so much more confident in that. I mean, I prepped mostly petition-based cases for interview when I was New York-based. So it's a little easier. But, even just understanding, I think I'm not really sure. I didn't really understand this concept of, like, you're so much paper-based focused when you're in the US, so much USCIS based, and even on a blanket L, I see my colleagues sending things that are like, they spend time writing a letter, and they may not have, at the point, so I get hired a lot just to prep people for the consular piece. And so I might be the first person that's talked to the employee ever from the law. And then you realize that their English language skills are weak or they're timid. And that you can have conversations then with the HR if it's a big corporate client, say, you need to be thinking about this when you're thinking about your transferring, but that's a slightly different conversation. But sometimes it's 3 days before the interview and you're the first person that's talked to them. So that's the kind of expertise that I've spent 4 years just doing, and why I feel like someone else can become a MERN can handle a MERN.
Wait, it's good. Dee, tell us where you're incompetent.
Probably everywhere.
Some days it feels that way.
Some days it does feel like that. Nowadays, probably more. Oh, so much I don't know, right now in Vegas, I mean, in our jurisdiction, I think removal has gone up. And then due diligence in a lot of the CBP ports of entry. I mean, even though we're a secondary post, we seem to have a lot of flux on that and I-9 compliance work. So, I mean, that's where I'm spending more time is beefing up on probably the I-9, which a couple of years ago, nobody was really doing, in my jurisdiction. And now it's become a big deal. Really recently due to the raids, so it's one of these things where I don't think, I've ever, for me as an attorney, I've always thought it's just an evolution of learning. I don't think I ever can sit there and say I know it all. I probably won't. I feel like some of my learned colleagues, and when I was speaking about certain things and spoke about an ICE case, and I was like, oh, I've never done that particular thing. So, that value of just, having the interaction with different colleagues, it's, areas does, make a difference. So I feel like I don't know very much at times.
So the first step is admitting it. Because there are some lawyers out there that just often sometimes really will take anything coming in the door and then they'll try and figure out how to do it afterwards as opposed to trying to learn it. But I think we all start a little bit that way, because we all have to get our feet wet or something. But for me, I don't do J1 physician waivers, won't deal with residency programs. Because I went to a seminar on it once and realized that this is extremely complex, not just immigration law, but the way the programs work. And I could never get good enough to give full, total advice to a client in that area. So I don't do it. I refer to other people that, deal with these things that have taken the time to get very good at it. Any areas that you feel limited in?
I think the main point here is that resonates with me the more I limit. I do a mix of family-based more than anything, employment and removal work. But the more I limit the type of cases that I take on, the more confident I feel with the ones that I do take on. That's only natural, but I don't do any HTB and do EB5. Those are really big ones. I don't do adoption within family because they don't really come in my door. I'd be confident to figure it out if I had to, but because I spend my time elsewhere, then I feel like that's helped me to develop the type of cases that I'm good at and that I really want to have more of anyway. So if someone comes in with an HTB issue, then I'll quickly refer it out to someone else that I know.
You can make yourself fairly confident, but not good at it. I'm in the same position with you on several things like that. I recognize my limitations and I don't want to take the time to learn some things if I'm not going to be doing them enough to make it worthwhile. And also if I'm not going to be providing a good service to the client. I know other people who do a better job of this.
And like you say, the level of competence required under the applicable rules is maybe a different standard than the quality that we want to provide.
Any other comments? Another issue we want to deal with a lot is communications, and this is a good group for that because there's, I'm going to read the rules, but it's usually up there too, communications that you have to explain in a manner to the extent reasonably necessary to permit the client to make informed decisions. You have to reasonably be able to consult with the client. How do you do this if you don't speak the same language as the client? How do you deal with interpreters and the quality of interpreters that you have to use? That's your area.
Well, yeah, in Las Vegas, I mean, nobody comes to me for my language skills in Spanish, unfortunately. I wish I did speak it, but I mean, we use an interpreter, she's our assistant. And I mean, we look for interpreters that have quite a bit of legal terminology because that's a little bit different than just the colloquial portion of it. And so if they can't explain legal concepts, then it's a problem. I also have a PI that was legally trained in Mexico, and so I do kind of usually pair her up and kind of do like a dry run to see if they can understand one another and kind of communicate the concepts. Because for me, I mean, if they can't, the interpreter can't communicate, then pretty much the concept is the best.
What about the other languages? When you're dealing with people who don't have office staff.
I use court certified translators, so we'll ask, we'll schedule them into the office. Usually our client is willing to pay for that, not that.
Some of your clients bring in their own interpreter.
Well, yes, they obviously need a family member to be cheap, I guess, but I use it more as an informational if they want to. I don't really think it's probative, and then I kind of just, I don't even charge in that instance, really. I kind of give them about 15 minutes and say, you know what, I would prefer if we had our own interpreter. And I also feel like when you have a family member or a friend, you're going to be kind of limited in what you're going to say to your attorney, maybe out of embarrassment, or you don't want to really fully get into your situation. And that could be even in the English setting, if you just spoke English. So we usually try to keep, that third party out eventually so that they're not a part of that attorney-client privilege.
So Nikki grabbed the mic. I want to know what kind of back issues that they have with dialects.
Yeah, that's hard. I can really understand some of my offers, but no, for me, where this comes up is often in my family-based cases. So U.S. citizen spouse sponsoring a foreigner, and I do a lot of direct consular filing, green card cases. So the U.S. citizen spouse, probably sometimes man, sometimes woman, so it's probably 50-50. But their partner often is the first generation, has immigrated to Australia, so from Asia. So often they'll sort of say, we'll start by making sure the first is in person if we can, or over video, because I find people with English as a second language really want to be there in person, because they're also taking all those other cues that are part of communication. It's not just about the language, it's about body language and all the other things that go into talking to somebody. And so trying to do video conference or in-person consultation first. But where I have real problems, often the U.S. citizen is driving the petition. And you're kind of isolated. And in the direct consular filing, the first step is very much about the person's, usually it's urgent job offer. You're focusing on getting the next section to the rules so you can actually file the I-130 at the consulate. So it's very driven by the U.S. citizen, because you need your blank letter, you need all the stuff from them. And all of a sudden you're flipping, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm a month into this case. I haven't really had a conversation about the IV processing that's about to happen with the the spouse. And then you realize, that the person has language issues. So it's hard, because I often have the first consultation with the U.S. citizen and they're driving it. And then you have to sort of stop and go, have you really connected with the spouse beneficiary here? And that's where I find myself, I need to do better on that, bringing in the spouse earlier, even though they're not part of the first step.
You always talk to the spouse in every case.
Moving forward, yes. I mean, at some point I talk to them, but it's sometimes oh, this is it late. I wish I had engaged with them from the very beginning, but like I said, it's hard when the U.S. citizen is driving it at the very outset, and you need them because it's always so urgent. You need to get that company support letter to start initiating the direct consular filing process. So you're so focused focused on getting that first little bit from the company and from the US citizen. And then you turn to the I-130, like you do it in stages, and then you're like, oh, I-130, now I have to start thinking about the relationship. I mean, you talk about it in the beginning, but yeah, so sometimes I feel like it's too late, so I need to do a better job bringing in the spouse at the very beginning as well.
Yeah, sometimes when you actually see them, you realize there's other issues you're gonna have to discuss with them.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I'm just thinking that D7 in the context of my office, like how important it is, I think, to have either a translator who's part of our staff or who's a professional translator who's excited to do this. And I mean, or it won't take long before, because it's always urgent, whatever the context, direct cost of planning or anything to our clients' lives or stake in any case, and it's always something that's urgent that's happening. So if we don't have translation done properly, then it doesn't take long before I say something. I say 3 words, and then the family member translating might translate that, and a minute and a half later they're still talking. So they're not saying the same thing, right? But I don't know what they're saying, and that's a problem.
In my office, the main second language is Spanish, and we only use our own staff to interpret. They'll have family members with them that want to, but even if they're just barely, you use a special vocabulary. And of course, and there's some staff members who don't let interpret because we don't think they're good enough. And then there's only some that we will take to asylum or to an immigration office because we want the best quality there is to people that understand what we're talking about.
Recently, actually, and this was in a litigation matter before immigration court, we had a Title III, Title IV case, and we had to kind of educate the judge. And I hadn't dealt with a particular case in that, so we had to kind of research what was a reasonable accommodation. And we ended up kind of sticking it to the judge and letting him know that he violated Title III and Title IV, communications in the courtroom. And we went on that and got a bond redetermination in that particular case. It was kind of something that we learned very quickly. And even judges make those mistakes. So I guess, it's important to be competent, I guess, in trying to get the right people in and the right testimony, even for consular processing or in a setting like in litigation for us.
Yeah. So what do you do if somebody brings in their own interpreter or using a service? But more often they bring in an interpreter, language your staff isn't good at. And during the initial consultation, you do not believe that the actual client is getting what you're saying. That they're not telling him the correct information. A blank look on his face, they're not, takes 5 times as long or a quarter longer, wait till you have 10 sentences before they interpret. What do you do when you take that, when you set up a case, you give a contract to that client, even though he doesn't, you don't think he understands what you're talking about? Did you meet your communication requirement?
You just ask to, do another consult at a later time or something, make an excuse basically at that point and say, we've had an emergency, we're gonna have to reschedule. And then try to get, an interpreter in that we can trust.
Yeah, so my issue is less about language and more about either my cultural competency, or more recently I've had a couple of mental capacity issues. So I do a lot of renunciation.
With the client?
Yeah, so I've had 2 renunciation cases where the applicant was a child of a U.S. citizen born in Australia but presents severe disabilities. The first one, we realized right away that person was not going to have the mental intent to be able to renounce U.S. citizenship. The second one, I'm in the process of the case, so the mother and father have come in, we've talked through the process, and I'm going to meet the daughter before we can move ahead, because for me, obviously, it's a huge thing to be able to have that conversation with her. She's in her 20s, but just to figure out, does she have the mental capacity to be able to renounce U.S. citizenship? Very specific intent required. So that's a very interesting thing that I'm dealing with, and I've been very clear with the mom, who is the one who's engaged me, I may not be able to go forward. So we pay for the consultation. We're going to pay for another consultation that would just be for me to interview the daughter to determine whether, make my judgment. And then she'll hire me for pronunciation after that step, if I believe that we can go for it. So it's like really important to be able to manage those steps so that I can stop at any time if I don't feel that we can go ahead with whatever it is that I'm going to be hired for. And then on the cultural competency side, it's more about prepping my clients for the US interview. And so one of the things I do, I refer to the movie Brooklyn, which I know is based on a book of a famous author. But my favorite scene in the movie is when they're on the boat getting ready to go to Ellis Island. And one of the two roommates are both Irish immigrants. One of them has already been through Ellis Island, and she's prepping the main character and says, when we get to Ellis Island, we need to think like an American. And that really resonates with my clients. So even if we do a lot of preparation about, no time to be humble, this is your opportunity. I planted the question with the consular officer yesterday, and I was very happy to hear the response, which was, this is your elevator pitch, your 5-minute interview. I call it some speed dating, whatever you want to describe it to the client. But sometimes if I feel like at the end of the prep call, the client is still not understanding that you have to think like an American when you get to the consulate, and I feel like I haven't been able to break through that cultural barrier, I will have a second prep call. So sometimes you make money and sometimes you don't, but at the end of the day, the most important thing is getting your client's visa approved. So I'll do whatever it takes to make sure I've been able to reach that cultural divide, so my client is prepared for those guys that were up here yesterday.
Another issue is the quality of the advice we give. I mean, the rules do require us to be able to inform the client in enough specificity of what the path is going to be, what the options are going to be. However, you see some people in the initial consultation pretty much say, okay, we're just going to follow this, we're going to do that. How in depth do you go in a consultation, try and explain the path someone's going to follow and possible problems? Because a lot of what we do, there's discretion along the way. And what do you do when they say, they don't really understand the path, or, what's the likelihood of success? Do you give probabilities?
I never will give a percentage or refuse to ever give a percentage of that chance. That's what people always want to hear, right? I know attorneys who will give a percentage, and that's, however we all want to communicate that kind, that I just refuse to give a percentage chances.
How do you discuss the likelihood of success? And most of the people that ask me for anything, they want to, what's your win rate? What's your success rate? And I have to explain, well, that's irrelevant because every case is different. It's not a scorekeeping. But
I'll tell people if I think they have a strong case. I'll tell people if I think there's a strong likelihood, a good chance of for me to be able to win the case. And if I think something's a long shot, then I'll tell them that too.
Use adjectives that differentiate the systems. How detailed do you get in your initial consultation with explaining the law to someone so they understand the purpose of the way you present?
Well, we set aside about an hour for the consult. So we use it as two-pronged, one for information, but two, to actually manage their expectations as well, because I think that if you only give them 15 minutes, I don't really think they even get 10% of the information. Even sometimes out of a 1-hour consult, I think Jim, you and I were talking about, they maybe get 20-30% of what we've been even discussing at that moment. So for us, I think we try to be as detailed, and also my malpractice insurance actually requires us to engage in a letter of engagement. So we usually try to spell it out in that as well at the same time as they're setting, straight, chance at it, so that they know and they're informed at least.
So for me, yes, an hour minimum for consultation. People will call and say, oh, well, someone else is doing 30-minute consults, and I just said, I can't I can be a good lawyer to you in 30 minutes because I need to hear your story, which takes 30 minutes, and then I need to be able to spend 30 minutes explaining the process and procedure for whatever it is. So for me, that's a minimum. Being paid and engaged, I think, is really important because it starts to, if I pick up the phone and find myself in one of those like 15-minute conversations, it's so awkward after. I'm like, oh, what do I do now? Because what I usually do to cover the CYA email is to send out an overview of the process and just like if there was any things that made me nervous, and even though it's free information I'm giving away at that point, I just feel like I have to get it out there so that I'm covering myself. Because I sometimes will find myself in those conversations, they're hard to get out of every now and then. In terms of so I always follow up mostly with the process overview at the minimum after a consultation. And if I feel like I don't know the answer, I 100% will tell the person in the consultation, I don't know the answer to this, I'm gonna come back to you on it.
We started this at 8 o'clock and how to try and be better lawyers and how to more learn the facts before we need to be proactive, as Stacey said, and more knowledgeable. So, wrap this almost done. How do you find time to study? When do you get a moment to study? Do you get a moment to study?
I mean, signing up for things like this is a reason to be forced to keep my hands up and to study.
You're right, getting on the panel sessions, you learn every time.
Being on a conference, being active in ALA, that's something that's not being active on the listers. Like you said, I mean, I don't think I've ever responded. Maybe I can't think of a time I've ever responded to a lister where I didn't at least like double check and make sure that I'm right about something else.
So you said be active with ALA, and I think that's a really good thing because ALA volunteers for anything. Be on a committee. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to have to analyze other people's problems. Offer to write regulatory comments. There's a lot of different things that you can use from. You wait. Oh, okay. All right. Any last words on that? Study time, sorry. Okay.